maybe to illustrate this thing about my political consciousness, how it came about. First, my father, when we moved from a two-roomed house to a sub-economic house in Worcester, 4 rooms, he started a practice that towards the end of the year, before Christmas, we would paint the house and so on. And at those occasions, he would sing a few songs to us, and only at that occasion. First one was Nkosi Sikelel I Afrika. The second one was We Shall Overcome. And the third one was, there were 2 versions. One was in Afrikaans, and the other one was, I think, in Xhosa. Sorry for my teeth, I can't articulate so well now. But Mayebuye, the Afrika. And then my mother would respond saying, Japi, the van is driving up and down, you must stop singing. There was no van, right? Now that was in the 60s. We moved into that house in 63 when I went to school. So that was part of it. And then also the church to which I belonged then, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Now its motto was, God our Father, Christ our Redeemer, and man our brother. And now, just briefly, it was a church established in the U.S. By slaves, Richard Allen. They were members of the Methodist Church then, and then at one point they were refused to have Holy Communion with the other white members. And so they left and they established the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And late in the 19th century, 1896 thereabouts, they also established a branch here in South Africa. And in fact, they share the same surname, the bishop, I think, Duane. Yeah. Okay, so that is the church. And of course, there was like, I mean, I attended the sermons, political, and also the membership was not only exclusively one group, population group, right? In South African terms. When I was grade 4, that's in 1966, I came from school, and at that time, one of the popular radio stations was Springbok Radio. And they had a number of serials in the afternoon also. And my mother and them, they were listening to it, and then it was interrupted by an announcement that the then Prime Minister Verwoerd was attacked first in Parliament, and later on they said he was killed, assassinated in Parliament. And I had a small red bicycle. And I got onto my red bicycle, and I went to a friend of mine. And when I got there, his father was our class teacher. And he asked me, why am I so excited? I said, no, didn't you hear Verwoerd is dead? So he asked me, why are you so pleased about that? I said, you know, my father said, it's because of that man that we were suffering so much. Right? And the following weekend, the funeral was broadcast, of course, on the radio, and I listened to the entire funeral. And one Afrikaans magazine, I remember, published a supplement. And I don't know the exact English, but because of some quotation from the Bible, but it's like, hoe het die helde geval? Vinniger as arende was hulle, sterker as leeu's. That is how they described Verwoerd. And there were a number of other things in our household, but I want just to share with you 2 other stories about the awakening of my political consciousness. One was that I think my maternal grandmother, she worked as a domestic worker also. And now at that time, the vegetables would be delivered at home by the hawker. And there's a big basket, and then my paternal grandmother had to empty it and return it. And the madam, she would stand at the end of the passage and slap her hands and say in Afrikaans first, "Hol my klimaat home, run, my maid, run," to return the basket. Until one day, this is now how my mother tells the story. One day, and when she did it again, then my grandmother said, "Missus, toe my kinders klein was, het ek gehol. Nou dat ek groot is, hol ek nie weer nie. Madam, when my children were small, I used to run. But now that they are big, I no longer run." And then she walked and returned the basket. Then, I'm not so sure whether this is the same story was told also about the same grandmother. During a war, either the First or Second World War, now she couldn't read and write really, but then she would collect the newspaper, and then she could make out somehow the photograph of maybe a leading photograph, front page photograph of a ship which was sunk. And those people for whom she worked supported, I think, Nazi Germany, so it must have been most probably Second World War. And then she folded the paper in such a way, just to have the picture, and then she would say very excitedly to the madam, "Madam, look, an Allied boat was sunk." And then the madam was very excited because supporting the Nazis. And then when she unfolded the paper and read, then she said, "Oh, but it's not true. It's a German boat which was sunk." And she was very upset about it.